What are we doing here this morning?
Well, we are having a field day updating producers and conservationists on a couple different practices that we think have some tremendous potential for this region of Wisconsin as well as Illinois and Iowa. We're going to be looking at a crop that's called Kernza, and it's a brand name that's applied to intermediate wheatgrass. And intermediate wheatgrass has gone through several generations of breeding for seed size, and the goal is to develop a perennial grain, a crop that we don't need to plant every single year. That we harvest it, we get a grain crop, and it regrows, and the next year we get a grain crop and we harvest it and it regrows. And you think about the time, the effort, and the soil erosion that we incur trying to farm this landscape, which has very fertile soils, but when we start getting into C and D slopes, we can't be moving a lot of soil because it's going to wind up down in our local waters in the Mississippi, and eventually it winds up in the Gulf of Mexico. Right. So we're going to look at that. We've done some grazing on Kernza to see what happens to yield if we graze it. Can we graze it and still get a yield? And if you think about what they do in Kansas, they graze wheat all the time with their livestock industry, take it off at a certain point with no yield hit. The second part is looking at establishing red clover as a cover crop within growing corn. So we know that cover crops have tremendous opportunity here in this region, in the driftless region, again, we keep something live growing on the landscape. It's going to hold our soil in place. In the case of red clover, we're capturing nitrogen out of the atmosphere, adding that to the soil, and the next crop that we plant into it, we can reduce our fertilizer bill. So we've protected water, we've held onto the soil, and we've grown some of our own fertilizer. The challenge is simply that our season is short. In Wisconsin, by the time we get around to harvesting crops, we know winter's on its way. And if we wait until we harvest grain, we may not have enough time to get this crop established. So we're looking at different ways of establishing that earlier in the season. And what we've done here for multiple years is interseeded at the V5 stage and drilled it right into the standing corn crop. Red clover will tolerate some level of shade. It'll establish, and when we take the corn grain off, the plant's already there and growing, and we can have a successful cover crop with red clover that we think has a lot of benefits that maybe farmers might want to think about.